What if I told you that the secret to power isn't power? It's not how fast you move, not how loud you speak, not how hard you hustle. It's how still you are on the inside. Let's flip the script. Because research shows people who stay calm under pressure are 23% more productive, make clearer decisions, and are more trusted by their peers. Not because they control others, but because they control themselves. But here's the hard truth. Most people burn out trying to look powerful, when real power was never about image. It's about inner stillness. Think about it. The calmer you are, the sharper your thinking. The sharper you think, the more precise your actions. And when your actions are focused, success stops being a chase. It starts becoming a consequence. This isn't just philosophy. This is what separates the reactive from the respected, the scattered from the strategic, the noise from the leader. Tell me in the comments, what's one moment where staying calm changed everything for you? And don't forget to hit subscribe. This channel is your quiet edge in a loud world. When you are calm from within, you will succeed in what you do. The more still you are inside, the more powerful your thoughts and actions become. There's a common misconception that success comes only through hustle, through relentless activity, urgent decisions, and the constant chase of outcomes. Modern culture rewards speed. Deadlines are tight, notifications are incessant, and people are praised for how much they can juggle at once. In this race, stillness is often mistaken for laziness, and calmness is confused with passivity. But when we look deeper, when we examine the lives of the most effective individuals, the most grounded leaders, and the wisest thinkers, we notice a pattern. Their greatest power begins not in motion, but in stillness. Stillness is not stagnation. It's not about doing nothing or withdrawing from the world. Instead, it is a conscious state of centered awareness where the mind isn't pulled in 1,000 directions. In this state, action becomes intentional, words become precise, time feels more expansive, you respond rather than react, and from that grounded place, decisions are made with clarity, not fear, not desperation, not ego. Let's pause for a moment and consider this. How often do you act from a place of internal noise? The rushing thoughts, the pressure to prove something, the emotional ripples from yesterday's conflict, or the fear of tomorrow's outcome. Most of us, without realizing it, operate from this whirlwind. And when we do, our actions, though swift, often lack wisdom. We're quick, but not effective. We're busy, but not aligned. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine a morning where you wake up and do not immediately grab your phone. You take a moment. You listen to your breath. You feel your body waking up. There is no rush. You move slowly, but with presence. You engage your tasks with a quiet confidence, not because you have everything under control, but because you are not at war with yourself. You are not scrambling to silence inner chaos. This is the foundation Sri Ravi Shankar alludes to. Success begins where agitation ends. When the mind is calm, it becomes like a still lake, clear, reflective, able to see beneath the surface. In contrast, when the mind is turbulent, even the most brilliant ideas are muddled. It's not that you're not capable, it's that you're not available to your own capacity. Take the example of a martial artist. In the middle of combat, success doesn't come from blind aggression. It comes from stillness of mind, from the ability to anticipate rather than overreact. The most skilled fighters are not the loudest, they are the most centered. Their calmness allows them to conserve energy, read their opponent, and strike only when it matters. This concept applies far beyond physical confrontation. In business, the most impactful leaders are rarely the ones who dominate meetings with volume. They are the ones who speak less, but when they do, others listen. Their presence is not loud, it is grounded. Their success doesn't come from pushing harder, but from making better decisions. And better decisions only come from clarity. Clarity is born from stillness. This principle also holds in creativity. Artists, writers, and thinkers often describe their greatest breakthroughs as arriving not during frantic output, but in the quiet hours, during walks in solitude, or even while doing nothing at all. These moments allow the subconscious to breathe, to organize, to connect dots that the conscious mind is too distracted to see. The more still the mind, the more fertile the imagination. There's also a neurological explanation. When we're agitated or anxious, our amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes overactive. In that state, we are more reactive, more impulsive, and less capable of long-term thinking. However, when we cultivate inner calm, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, planning, and reflection, becomes more engaged. In other words, calmness isn't just a spiritual or philosophical state, it's a biological advantage. So how do we begin to reclaim this stillness? Not through isolation, but through awareness. Not by running from responsibility, but by returning to the breath between responsibilities. Stillness can begin in small ways. Turning off your phone for 30 minutes, drinking your tea slowly, pausing before responding to an emotional message, walking without needing to be productive, allowing silence to exist in a conversation without rushing to fill it. Each of these is a tiny rebellion against chaos, a seed of stillness you plant in the garden of your daily life. And it's not about perfection. There will be days when the noise creeps in, when you lose your center. But the key is to notice, to return, over and over again. Every time you come back to stillness, you strengthen it. You make it a place you can trust. When you act from that place, your actions carry a different weight. They're not desperate. They're not seeking validation. They are precise, rooted, whole. And that, paradoxically, is what makes them powerful. True power is the quiet, steady force that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. It moves mountains without lifting its voice. In a world obsessed with motion, stillness is a quiet revolution. It's the doorway to clarity, the cradle of wisdom, and perhaps most importantly, it is the starting point of every meaningful success. Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics taught that success begins not in action, but in awareness. Before we attempt to master the world, we must learn to govern our inner life. Stillness is not retreat. It is the discipline of the mind. It allows you to act without being swept away by emotions or external noise. Just as a calm sea reflects clearly, a calm mind sees truth without distortion. From that place, the Stoic finds clarity, and from clarity, effective action. We often believe that success is something we chase: a position, a promotion, a finished project, an award, or even the applause of others. We're taught that the path to success lies outside of us, through relentless effort, constant networking, working harder than everyone else, and staying visible at all costs. In a world ruled by metrics and achievements, this seems reasonable. But there is an overlooked truth. Real success does not begin on the outside. It begins within. At the core of every meaningful accomplishment is a person who has come to stabilize their internal world. Not necessarily someone who is fearless or always confident, but someone who knows how to return to center again and again, even when life feels uncertain. That inner stillness doesn't make the storms stop. It simply gives you the strength to stand through them. You can have all the resources in the world, connections, intelligence, talent, and time. But if your internal state is full of chaos, doubt, and emotional turbulence, you'll find a way to sabotage yourself. You might rush decisions, react out of fear, overcompensate to feel worthy, or burn out before your vision comes to life. External conditions can only support you temporarily, but inner clarity, that's what creates sustainable movement forward. Think of a sculptor. The stone is important, the tools matter, but without patience, attention, and a clear inner image of what is being shaped, the sculptor chips randomly. The outcome becomes an accident, not art. The same applies to your life. When you act without inner alignment, your success, if it comes, feels disconnected, even hollow. But when your internal space is ordered calm and purposeful, even small wins feel whole. They carry meaning. There's a tendency to overvalue appearances. We compare our journeys with the surface-level images others present. We scroll through curated moments, unaware of the emotional exhaustion and internal doubts behind those polished facades. It's easy to assume that others are succeeding because they seem loud, charismatic, or busy. But noise is not the same as depth. Presence is not always visible, and the most quietly successful people are often those whose inner lives are deeply cultivated. Why is inner calm so strongly linked to sustainable success? Because it builds resilience. When your well-being doesn't depend entirely on how things go externally, on outcomes, validation, or control, you are far more adaptable. You can weather disappointments without falling apart. You can navigate setbacks without internal collapse. You can continue walking even when the path is unclear because you're not waiting for the world to confirm your worth. Moreover, people are drawn to those who are grounded. Whether it's a colleague, a leader, or a friend, when someone operates from a calm-centered place, they naturally inspire trust. They don't react impulsively. They create space for others to think, speak, and contribute. That makes them powerful, even without needing to dominate. In contrast, when someone is led by anxiety or internal fragmentation, others sense it. It leaks into their decisions, their tone, their presence. People may not consciously know why they feel uneasy, but they do. And that unease creates distance, even if the person seems successful on the surface. Let's take a closer look at how success built from within actually behaves. It is not rushed. Inner clarity allows for timing that feels natural, not forced. It is not reactive. Decisions are made with reflection, not as emotional defense. It is not desperate. There's no need to convince others constantly because alignment has already occurred internally. It is consistent. Inner stability leads to reliable, steady action, even in uncertainty. It is peaceful. There's no war inside between what you're doing and who you are. You may be wondering, can this be cultivated? Or is it something you're born with? It's absolutely cultivatable. It's a practice, a muscle, and just like physical strength, inner strength comes from repetition. From the daily choices you make about how you treat your thoughts, where you place your attention, and how often you return to silence in a noisy world. It may look like journaling in the morning before the world wakes up. It may look like a pause before speaking in a tense meeting. It may look like choosing not to argue when provoked. It may look like walking away from applause, knowing it doesn't define you. These aren't dramatic gestures. They don't go viral, but over time, they build a solid inner ground from which all your external pursuits can grow with integrity. There's a metaphor worth remembering. A tree is only as tall as its roots are deep. If you want your success to rise without toppling, you must go deep first. That depth is found in silence, in reflection, in learning how to sit with discomfort, without running in, making peace with the parts of yourself that used to be ignored. The paradox is this: the more you care for your internal world, the less desperate you are to control the external one. And that very freedom from over-attachment to outcomes is what allows success to flourish without exhausting you. You start to realize that success is not always a trophy. Sometimes it's a decision made with clarity, a moment of emotional regulation, a quiet refusal to betray your values. And over time, these small internal victories build the foundation for outer achievements that are not just impressive, but deeply rooted. To seek success outside while neglecting the self inside is like building a castle on sand. It may rise quickly, it may even attract admiration, but the first storm will reveal the truth that it was never stable. Real success, the kind that feels right in your bones, the kind that doesn't fade with time, must be built from a mind that is calm and a heart that is whole. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself in your way of thinking. Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics remind us that external achievements are fleeting and beyond our control. What endures is the inner architecture we build our character judgment and self-command. Real success in Stoic terms is living in accordance with virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. When you live by these, success is not a destination, it becomes the byproduct of inner alignment. The wise don't measure themselves by outcomes, but by how well they've acted, regardless of what followed. We're used to associating action with urgency. In almost every modern setting, activity is idolized. Whether in business, academics, or social media, there's a constant pressure to be doing, moving, speaking, building. Energy is praised. Movement is worshipped. Stillness, on the other hand, is often viewed as passivity or hesitation. But this perception is deeply flawed because there is a kind of action, quiet, precise, deeply effective, that doesn't arise from restlessness but from calm. Imagine standing at the edge of a forest watching a panther move. It's not frantic. It's not wasting motion. It walks with intention. Every muscle is coordinated. Every step matters. The power lies not in the sheer volume of movement, but in its focus. That's what happens when calm becomes the engine behind action. You begin to move not out of compulsion, but out of clarity, not to escape, but to shape. When we act from agitation, our thoughts are scattered. Our actions become reactions. We're not building, we're bouncing, reacting to whatever appears urgent at the moment. We send emails with nervous energy. We speak before listening. We take on commitments we don't want because we feel the pressure to prove our worth. But when calm becomes the root of our movement, something shifts entirely. The same task, writing, speaking, planning, leading, suddenly carries a different frequency. It is no longer fueled by fear or ego. It's anchored. The calm person doesn't need to rush to be effective. Their very presence slows down the chaos around them. They lead without shouting. They direct without control. You may have experienced this before without realizing it. Think of the times when you acted with your full attention, when your breath was steady, your body relaxed, and your intention clear. In those moments, your effectiveness was not proportional to your effort. In fact, you likely did less, but achieved more. That's the paradox of calm energy. It enhances precision while minimizing waste. In emergency medicine, the most effective doctors are not the ones who move the fastest or shout the loudest. They are the ones whose inner state remains composed. When a life is on the line, calmness is not a luxury, it's a necessity. In those high-stakes moments, frantic energy only increases risk. But a calm mind sees clearly. It makes critical decisions with confidence, not panic. In entrepreneurship, the same principle applies. Many startups fail not because of a lack of ideas, but because of scattered execution. Founders often run on adrenaline, jumping from one fire to the next, reacting to pressure, overcommitting, burning out. But the founders who survive and thrive are usually those who have mastered their internal state. They don't chase noise, they track impact. They don't move quickly for the sake of speed, they move deliberately, guided by calm assessment. What makes calm so powerful is that it is non-reactive. It holds space between stimulus and response. In that space lies the possibility of wise, meaningful action. Without that space, our thoughts rush ahead of us, but calmness reins them in. It creates a pause, a microsecond of presence where decisions can shift from impulsive to intentional. And the beauty is that this applies not just to leadership or crisis, but also to everyday living. When you cook with calm, the meal becomes an experience. When you speak with calm, your words carry more weight. When you listen with calm, others feel truly heard. When you work with calm, your output reflects inner alignment. In all these moments, calmness doesn't diminish your energy, it refines it. Like light channeled through a magnifying glass, your energy becomes focused. It gains the power to influence deeply without needing to overpower. It's also worth noting that calmness is contagious. A person grounded in their own peace creates a ripple effect. In a heated conversation, their tone sets a new emotional standard. In a chaotic environment, their steadiness becomes a mirror. Others unconsciously begin to regulate themselves in response. This is why the calmest person in the room often becomes the anchor, the one others turn to even if they say very little. But how do we cultivate this kind of calm-driven action? It begins with reconditioning how we view calm itself. Most people think of calm as something passive, something you resort to when you're exhausted. But in truth, calm is a cultivated strength. It comes from a disciplined mind and a patient heart. It's not simply relaxing. It's becoming so stable internally that the world outside no longer pulls you out of alignment. This strength grows from practices like reflection, solitude, intentional pauses throughout the day, and even saying no to things that fragment your attention. It grows when you stop glorifying busy as a badge of honor and begin honoring depth instead. The transition is subtle but transformative. You begin asking new questions. Is this necessary? Am I acting from clarity or compulsion? Does this move me closer to what I truly value? And from those questions, a new kind of action is born. Not forced, not frantic, but deeply rooted and far more impactful. Let's be honest, the world is noisy. It will try to drag you into its speed. It will offer you 100 reasons to act now, to rush, to shout, to prove. But you don't have to obey that pace. You can return to yourself. You can remember that calm is not the absence of energy. It is energy in its most refined, most powerful form. So when you find yourself tempted to sprint, to outpace your thoughts, to move without grounding pause, return. Ask yourself not just, what should I do, but from what place am I doing this? Because when calm becomes the source of your action, the results no longer just reach outward, they reach inward. They build not just achievements, but a self you can trust. And from that self, every movement you make becomes not just action, but aligned purpose. If a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along. Epictetus. Calmness to the Stoics is a form of personal sovereignty. When you act from inner quiet, you're not reacting, you're exercising choice. You are no longer a puppet of impulse, but an agent of reason. For the Stoic action is most effective when it flows from equanimity. It's not about speed or strength, but intentionality. The true warrior, like the Stoic sage, knows that the fiercest strength lies not in motion, but in mastery of emotion. There are moments in life when a person walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere without saying a word. There is no declaration, no flamboyant gesture, no commanding tone. And yet everyone feels their presence. People listen more intently, conversations slow, attention realigns. It is not dominance. It is not manipulation. It is not charisma in the theatrical sense. It is calmness as authority, the quiet command that radiates from someone who is deeply anchored in themselves. This kind of authority doesn't beg to be recognized. It does not force. It does not strive. It simply is. And that perhaps is why it is so rare and so respected. We live in a world that celebrates visibility. We're conditioned to associate power with volume. In politics, in business, and even in social settings, it often seems that the louder someone is, the more authority they must have. But that's only surface-level influence. Real authority doesn't shout. It doesn't need validation. It speaks in a voice that's not necessarily audible, but unmistakable. It comes from alignment, when your internal world is coherent, when your words match your values, and when your presence doesn't need to be dressed in performance. A calm person carries a kind of gravitational field. They don't take up space, they hold space. They don't dominate others, they bring others into their centeredness. In high-stakes environments, this is often what separates leaders from bosses, mentors from managers. A true leader may not be the one who talks the most in meetings, but they are the one people look to when clarity is needed. They don't command with fear. They influence through steadiness. Think of a skilled pianist in an orchestra. They don't bang on the keys to be heard. They listen first. They wait. And then, when the time is right, their notes add something irreplaceable to the whole. That's what calm authority is: timing plus depth, not speed plus noise. Why does calmness carry such weight? Because it reflects something deeper than intellect or charisma. It reflects self-mastery. When a person is calm, especially in moments of tension, it shows that they are not ruled by emotion or impulse. It signals that they are not reacting from ego, but responding from clarity. In conflict, this becomes especially obvious. Imagine two people in a disagreement. One raises their voice, interrupts, gestures wildly. The other remains composed, not out of suppression, but from discipline. Their tone remains steady, their posture open. They respond instead of retaliate. Over time, the first person's intensity starts to lose its grip. The calm individual's presence starts to dominate, not through force, but through inner solidity. People sense when someone cannot be shaken easily, and that creates natural respect. Not fear-based respect, but a kind of inner acknowledgement. This person is not easily swayed. I can trust their center. This is why calmness becomes an unspoken form of power. It reveals more about a person's strength than their resume ever could. When you stay calm in situations that would break most people, your stillness becomes a statement. It says, I am not here to fight for attention. I already know where I stand. And this internal positioning changes everything. It changes how you negotiate. Calm people aren't desperate. They're not easily baited. They don't need to fill every silence. This gives them leverage, not because they're manipulative, but because their very state communicates that they're grounded. That sense of grounding is incredibly attractive in professional settings, romantic relationships, and even friendships. Calmness also translates to clarity in communication. While others may fumble for words or get lost in emotional spirals, the calm individual chooses language carefully. They speak when they mean it. And because they don't overtalk, their words carry more gravity. They're not trying to impress, they're aiming to connect. That difference is subtle, but it transforms the dynamic of every interaction. This kind of authority cannot be faked. People can sense pretended calm when someone masks chaos with a quiet exterior. True calm authority comes from deep inner work. It's the product of hours spent alone, days of self-reflection, the courage to confront one's inner shadows, and the discipline to act with integrity even when no one is watching. It's not always about meditation or mindfulness routines, though. Those help. Sometimes it's about how you carry yourself through the mundane. Do you pause before reacting to difficult news? Do you resist the urge to constantly defend yourself? Do you allow yourself to listen fully before speaking? Do you act the same way when no one is looking? These small daily decisions build the muscle of calm, and eventually they give birth to the kind of unshakable presence that speaks louder than noise ever could. There's something else too. Calmness communicates security. When you are calm, you tell the world, I am not threatened. That message is powerful because it creates safety for others. People feel more at ease around you. They trust you to hold emotional space. They open up more easily, not because you demand it, but because your calmness gives them permission to breathe. Over time, this becomes your influence. You become the person others seek when things go wrong. You become the one whose silence says more than a dozen frantic voices. Your actions echo deeper because they come from stability, not reaction. But it's not about hierarchy or status. It's about presence. Authority born from calm is not about leading from above, but from within. It's not about being better. It's about being rooted. When your roots are deep, the wind may bend you, but it won't break you. That resilience is what people respect. Not the perfection, not the flash, but the depth. So if you want to be heard, pause before you speak. If you want to lead, learn to listen from stillness. If you want your actions to carry weight, make sure they come from alignment, not impulse. Because in a world full of noise, the most powerful voice is the one that doesn't need to raise itself to be felt. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. True authority for the Stoics is not about power over others. It's about dominion over the self. The calm person holds a quiet authority because they embody virtue without needing to perform it. Their stillness communicates strength. Their restraint earns respect. Stoic leaders are those who lead by example, not by decree. Influence in the Stoic sense comes not from volume, but from the weight of character. Calmness reveals that weight without a word. In an age dominated by speed, slowing down feels counterintuitive. We live in a society where the clock is always ticking, where achievements are measured by deadlines, met tasks completed, and how quickly we can move from one milestone to the next. In this climate, slowing down can feel like failure. It's seen as laziness, as lack of ambition, as falling behind. But perhaps we've misunderstood the very rhythm of progress. Not all growth is loud. Not all forward motion looks like motion. Some of the most powerful transformations in nature occur quietly beneath the surface, away from the spotlight. And in that silence, they gather strength. They unfold with grace. Just like a flower doesn't burst into bloom, it opens slowly, petal by petal. There's something sacred about slowing down. It invites awareness. It builds depth. It allows space for life to breathe between the lines of activity. And in doing so, it helps us reduce the tension we carry, most of which is created not by reality, but by our resistance to its pace. So why are we so afraid of slowing down? One reason is fear. We fear being seen as irrelevant, overlooked, or outpaced. We fear losing our edge in a competitive world. We equate visibility with worth and momentum with meaning. But speed does not equal significance. A person can move quickly and go nowhere. A life can be packed with events and still feel empty. Slowing down isn't about doing less. It's about doing with presence. It means choosing quality over quantity, depth over haste, attention over distraction. It means stepping out of the performance race and asking what truly matters here. When we rush through life, we miss the nuances. We overlook the subtle signs our bodies send us. We gloss over the emotional cues in our relationships. We cut corners in our work that end up costing us more in the long run. Ironically, in our attempt to gain time, we often lose it chasing results that lack staying power. When you move through life with a slower rhythm, you begin to notice things you never saw before. The texture of conversation, the shifts in your own mood, the way your intuition whispers beneath the static. You stop skimming and start inhabiting. You stop reacting and start responding. In short, you stop surviving and start living. Consider a writer who is on a tight deadline. They push through late nights, typing furiously, driven by pressure. The words pile up quickly, but something feels off. The writing is scattered, the ideas shallow. Then in frustration, they take a break, a walk, a shower, a moment of silence. Suddenly, something shifts. A sentence forms clearly. A structure emerges. In that space of slowness, what was once forced now flows. This is not an isolated phenomenon. Neuroscience confirms it, the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for creativity, memory, and deep reflection activates not when we're intensely focused, but when we're resting, when we pause, when we slow down. And yet many people resist this truth. They fear that slowing down means surrendering their goals, but it's quite the opposite. When we slow down, we align with our goals more intelligently. We act with greater intentionality. We conserve energy for what matters. We operate not from urgency, but from wisdom. There's another reason slowing down is powerful. It returns us to natural timing. The world moves in cycles, day and night. Seasons, tides, breath. Nothing in nature is in constant acceleration. Even the heart, in its steady beat, alternates between contraction and rest. Yet we often live as though rest is a weakness, as though stillness must be justified. But what if rest is not an intermission, but an essential part of the symphony? Think about the great composers. They didn't just fill their scores with notes. They use silence as music. The pause after a crescendo, the stillness between chords, that's where emotion gathers. That's where meaning lands. Life is no different. It's in the quiet moments that our deepest understandings begin to form. When we give ourselves permission to slow down, we also become kinder to ourselves and to others. Rushing often breeds impatience. It shortens our fuse. It makes us more critical, more rigid. But slowness softens. It makes space for empathy. It teaches us to meet life as it is, rather than as we demand it to be. This doesn't mean abandoning ambition. It doesn't mean being idle. It means reorienting how we move through the world. Instead of sprinting blindly toward an undefined there, we begin to walk with purpose, with breath, with a fuller awareness of who we are becoming along the way. And perhaps that's the heart of it. Slowing down invites us to be instead of constantly trying to become. It reminds us that we're not machines of output, but living beings meant to experience, to feel, to reflect, to connect. And when we remember this, the pressure begins to loosen its grip. So the next time you feel the heaviness of stress building in your chest, ask yourself, what am I rushing toward? What am I afraid will happen if I slow down? What would it look like to do this with more care, more ease? Often the answers reveal that we are not behind. We are just disconnected from our rhythm. A flower does not compare its timing to the bloom beside it. It opens when the sun reaches it, when the conditions are right, when its inner readiness meets the outer opportunity, and even then it opens slowly, tenderly, without apology. So let us remember, slowing down is not weakness. It is not regression. It is a form of courage. To slow down in a world obsessed with speed is to reclaim your power, not from force, but from presence. Take a deep breath, get present in the moment, and ask yourself what's important this very second. Epictetus, the Stoics rejected urgency as a distraction from virtue. To them, slowing down is not sloth, it is strategy. You are not falling behind when you move with awareness. You are gaining perspective. The Stoic understands that haste clouds judgment while presence sharpens it. Time is only wasted when spent thoughtlessly. But when every action is infused with intention and principle, even slowness becomes strength. Better to move slowly with wisdom than quickly with regret. There is a certain type of stress that doesn't come from what we're doing, but from how far we've drifted from ourselves while doing it. We move through our days carrying a weight that often has no clear shape. It's not just deadlines or obligations or the demands of others. It's the quiet inner tension of not being at home within ourselves. And the more we chase life outward, the more pressure builds inward. Stress, in its deepest form, is often a signal, a quiet whisper from the self we've ignored. It says, "I'm tired of running. I want to come back home." But in the modern world, that message is easy to miss. We're trained to respond to pressure with more performance. We push harder, sleep less, multitask more. We reach for coping mechanisms, caffeine noise distraction, that give the illusion of control. But true relief doesn't come from doing more. It comes from remembering who we are beneath the doing. The path to reducing pressure begins not with adding something but with subtracting. It begins with the simple act of returning inward. This is not a retreat from life, but a return to presence. When we reconnect with ourselves gently, honestly, without judgment, something shifts. We begin to feel the difference between tension created by misalignment and tension that's simply part of being human. We can't eliminate all stress, but we can reduce the stress we create through resistance, over-identification, and disconnection. So how do we return to the self when life feels relentless? It begins with noticing. Noticing when your breath becomes shallow. Noticing when your shoulders tighten. Noticing when your thoughts race, but offer no resolution. These are not signs of weakness, they're invitations. They are reminders that you've drifted. And the beauty is, you can always return. There's a quiet power in taking pause. In a single moment of stillness, you reclaim your life from the grip of unconscious momentum. That pause may be as brief as a few breaths, or a slow walk with no destination, or journaling before the day begins. These are not indulgences, they are anchors. You don't need to fix everything to feel more at peace. You only need to meet yourself fully right where you are. And from that meeting, your nervous system begins to soften, your breath lengthens, your sense of urgency decreases, not because the world has changed, but because you have remembered your center. Much of the pressure we feel is not external, it's internalized expectation. It's the self-imposed need to be constantly achieving, improving, proving. But here's a radical idea. You are allowed to rest even when your to-do list isn't finished. You are allowed to feel enough even if you're still growing. You are allowed to say, "This is heavy," without having a solution in place. Returning to the self means stepping off the conveyor belt of productivity and asking deeper questions. What do I actually need right now? Is this pressure coming from truth or from fear? What would self-compassion look like in this moment? These questions can't be answered from the surface. They require slowness. They require a willingness to stop numbing and start listening. Often the answers are simple, but we're too busy to hear them. And that's the irony. The more disconnected we are from ourselves, the more we seek comfort in the very systems that keep us disconnected. We scroll to escape. We overwork to feel secure. We overpromise to feel worthy. And all the while the self, our true, calm, rooted self, waits patiently for our return. There is wisdom in the body that the mind often forgets. When you sit in silence, your heart rate begins to regulate itself. When you speak gently to yourself, your muscles release their guard. When you move slowly and intentionally, your breath reminds you that you are alive, not as a task to complete, but as an experience to feel. Returning to the self is not a one-time act. It is a rhythm, a cycle, a daily remembering. It may happen in the shower, or while watching the sky change colours, or during a conversation where you choose honesty over performance. Each return deepens your relationship with yourself, and the more familiar you become with that grounded place, the less power external pressure has over you. It's also important to remember you are not behind. You are not late to your own life. What you're feeling right now is not failure. It's friction between who you've been pretending to be and who you truly are. That tension is not punishment, it's a compass. Stress can feel like an enemy, but sometimes it's the most loyal friend you have. It shows up when something needs attention, when something is misaligned, when your soul is tired of being silenced by your schedule. Listen closely, not with judgment, but with curiosity. What does your stress want you to know? Maybe it wants you to set better boundaries. Maybe it wants you to rest without guilt. Maybe it wants you to grieve something you haven't acknowledged. Or maybe it just wants you to sit with yourself, not as a project to fix, but as a person to embrace. This is not easy work. It requires courage to stop long enough to feel, to risk stillness in a culture of movement. But every time you return to yourself, you become a little more whole. You don't eliminate stress entirely, but you no longer let it define your worth. So the next time the pressure builds, when your chest tightens, your thoughts spiral, your spirit feels compressed, pause. Not to escape, but to return. Place your hand on your heart, and remember you are not the pressure, you are the presence beneath it. From that place, life can begin again, gently, quietly, and fully alive. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoics believed peace isn't found by rearranging the world, but by reordering our inner world. When we return to ourselves, our reason, our values, our capacity to choose, we reduce the suffering we create through resistance. Pressure melts when we reconnect with what is within our control. No matter how wild the storm, the Stoic always returns inward. There, in the quiet of the soul, we find clarity and with it freedom. We tend to celebrate speed. The faster something grows, the more impressive it seems. Fast results, quick wins, overnight success. These have become modern badges of honor. But nature tells a different story. In the natural world, the most beautiful and lasting growth is never rushed. It unfolds in rhythm, in season, in stillness. It moves slowly, not because it's weak, but because it's wise. Watch a tree grow. It does not sprout overnight. It stretches quietly toward the sun, season after season, layer by layer. You do not hear its roots extending into the earth. You do not see its trunk thickening in the silence of night, but the growth is happening stable, deep, and real. Human development, like nature, is cyclical. It cannot be forced. It must be allowed. And when we align ourselves with this slower, more organic rhythm, we begin to recognize that true transformation is not dramatic. It's gradual. It's not the flash of inspiration or the sprint of productivity. It's the quiet return to integrity, day after day, even when no one is watching. Consider a flower. Its blooming is not a performance. It does not open for approval. It does not compete with the blooms beside it. Its timing is its own, determined by the light it receives, the soil it rests in, and the season it is called into. It doesn't try to rush spring in the dead of winter. It waits, nurtures, and responds to the conditions with patience. That's the lesson. Growth that lasts is responsive, not reactive. It listens before it moves. It honors timing over urgency. This truth is particularly important in an age of instant everything. We've come to expect speed in all areas of life: communication, learning, healing, even relationships. If we don't see quick progress, we assume something's wrong. We internalize this impatience. We begin to view ourselves as projects in need of constant acceleration. But speed does not equal maturity. Fast results can be fragile. Slow growth, in contrast, builds resilience. It gives space for integration, for lessons to sink in, for wounds to heal fully, for identity to develop with roots. When you give yourself the gift of slow, you are not falling behind. You are allowing your foundation to become unshakable. Think of all the forces a tree must withstand: storms, droughts, heat, cold. It survives not because it grows tall quickly, but because it grows deep first. The same is true for your inner life. Strength doesn't come from rushing, it comes from grounding, from allowing yourself to be shaped, layer by layer, even when it looks like nothing is happening. And often the most meaningful transformations are invisible for a while. You may be learning how to set boundaries, or unlearning patterns inherited from your past, or rebuilding your sense of self after loss. These things don't show immediate progress. There's no finish line to cross, no applause to confirm your efforts. But in silence, under the surface, change is taking root. And when it finally blooms, it won't be flashy, it will be authentic, it will be whole. Let's not forget, even the most beautiful blooms begin in darkness. Seeds are buried, roots are unseen, but it's in that darkness that preparation happens. Growth is not always about movement. Sometimes growth is simply not giving up while you're still becoming. This isn't just a poetic metaphor, it's neuroscience too. Studies show that the brain needs repetition and rest to rewire itself. Deep change in thinking patterns or behaviors doesn't come from a single epiphany. It comes from returning to new habits again and again, from sitting with discomfort instead of escaping it, from walking through difficult emotions slowly instead of running past them. Slowness allows understanding to mature, and so doesn't mean stagnant. It doesn't mean stuck. It means you're allowing integration, the process by which knowledge becomes wisdom, by which intention becomes embodiment. You're not just collecting experiences, you're digesting them, learning from them, letting them shape you in meaningful ways. When you rush growth, you risk imitating rather than becoming. You may adopt someone else's voice, someone else's timeline, someone else's values. But when you grow slowly, your voice begins to emerge, not as an echo, but as a truth. You begin to know what matters to you, not because someone told you, but because you felt it over time. You've tested it. You've lived it. That's what makes it real. Slow growth also builds humility. It teaches you that mastery is never complete, that becoming is a lifelong process, that healing has layers, that depth requires devotion, not just desire. In this slower rhythm, you learn to trust yourself, to listen inward, to rest when needed, to act from clarity, not compulsion. And that trust, once cultivated, becomes the compass you carry through life's uncertainties. Let's stop glorifying the fast lane. Let's begin honoring the wisdom of the slow path. The entrepreneur who spends years refining their mission instead of chasing every trend. The artist who waits for authenticity rather than producing for approval. The parent who learns to be present instead of perfect. The individual who chooses healing over hiding even when it takes time. These are the ones who bloom like wildflowers in spring, unexpected, grounded, and full of life. So if your journey feels slow today, if progress seems quiet, invisible, or uneven, take heart. You are not lost. You are growing. Not all change needs to be seen to be real. Not all movement looks like momentum. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remain rooted to let your petals unfold in their own time. Because when you honor the rhythm of nature, you begin to realize there is no rush to become. There is only the quiet unfolding of who you already are. No great thing is created suddenly. Epictetus' Stoicism is in harmony with nature, and nature never rushes. The Stoics knew that real growth of character wisdom and resilience is always slow. Like a tree adding rings, we strengthen through seasons, not seconds. Progress is measured in how we respond to difficulty, not how fast we move. Patience, then, is not passivity, it is faith in process. The Stoic accepts that what is meant to endure must be built gradually with care and principle. In the noise of everyday life, serenity feels elusive. Messages ping, deadlines loom, conversations overlap. Thought after thought competes for attention. Amid this constant stimulation, clarity becomes a rare and precious thing. But mental clarity doesn't arise from thinking harder or trying more. It arises paradoxically from cultivating serenity, an internal stillness that gives thoughts space to settle and truth the room to surface. Imagine a snow globe. When shaken, it's a blur of movement. Nothing is visible, but set it down, and slowly the particles begin to fall. Only then can the landscape inside be seen. Your mind is the same. When agitated, everything is clouded, your decisions, your perceptions, your reactions. But when serenity is present, your thoughts settle, your vision clears. What once felt chaotic becomes understandable. Serenity is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of inner spaciousness. It's not dependent on external peace, but on internal grounding. And it is this grounded state that gives rise to mental clarity, not a clarity born of calculation, but of calm insight. So how does serenity function as the foundation for clear thought? First, it creates room between stimulus and response. In serenity, you don't react impulsively. You pause. You observe. This pause, this breath between action and reaction, is where clarity is born. It's in that gap that your mind shifts from the reactive to the reflective. Second, serenity lowers internal noise. It quiets the emotional static that often clouds judgment. When you're anxious, angry, or overstimulated, your mind narrows. You see through the lens of threat or urgency. But serenity expands your field of awareness. You can hold multiple perspectives. You can make decisions not out of panic, but out of presence. Third, serenity slows time. Not literally, of course, but psychologically. In serenity, you are not rushing ahead. You are present. That presence makes everything feel more spacious. A conversation becomes deeper. A task feels less pressured. Even challenges are experienced with more agency. We tend to underestimate how much of our confusion is self-created, not because we lack intelligence, but because we lack stillness. We try to think our way out of overwhelm when what we really need is to stop just for a moment and allow the noise to fade. Clarity in this sense is a function of allowing, not forcing. That's why serenity is often confused with idleness. To the untrained mind, stillness looks like nothing is happening. But in reality, it is during serene states that the brain can integrate information, draw unexpected connections, and process emotions constructively. Creativity increases. Emotional regulation improves. Long-term thinking returns. Think about the times you've had your clearest insights. Rarely did they arrive in the middle of a frantic to-do list. They came while walking, resting, staring out a window. In those serene moments, the mind softened and clarity emerged naturally. This principle holds across cultures and wisdom traditions. From Zen monasteries to Stoic journals, from desert retreats to the quietude of poets, serenity has always been revered as the precondition for wisdom, not because quiet is sacred in itself, but because it clears the internal clutter that distorts reality. And clarity is not only about logic, it is about seeing what is without distortion. Serenity helps you see reality without the filter of fear, ego, or assumption. You stop projecting your past into the present. You stop catastrophizing the future. You return to what is actually happening, and in that return, truth becomes simpler. You can distinguish between what's urgent and what's important, between your voice and the voices you've absorbed. This is the clarity that changes lives, not just through better choices, but through better presence. But serenity must be cultivated. It doesn't appear by accident. It is a habit of the heart, a discipline of attention. It begins with choices, choosing silence over noise even for a few minutes each day, choosing solitude not as escape but as nourishment, choosing to breathe deeply when stress wants you to tense, choosing to listen fully even when your mind wants to race ahead. Each of these acts plants serenity like a seed. Over time, that seed becomes your default. The space between thoughts grows. Your inner world becomes less reactive, more spacious, and in that space, clarity finds you. Another often overlooked component of serenity is simplicity. When your life is cluttered with too many obligations, too many goals, too much input, your mental space reflects that chaos. Serenity thrives in simplicity, in narrowing your focus, in creating boundaries, in choosing fewer but deeper priorities. Simplicity is not minimalism for aesthetics, it's clarity in action. It says, I don't need to do everything. I need to do what matters with presence. And serenity does not require perfect conditions. In fact, it is most powerful when practiced amid difficulty. To find serenity in silence is valuable. To find it in chaos is transformational. When the storm rages around you and you stay rooted, that's serenity. When someone criticizes you and you respond with understanding, that's serenity. When everything feels urgent, but you still take a breath, that's serenity. And from that serenity, clarity arrives not as a rush, but as a knowing. This knowing changes the way you move through the world. You stop chasing answers and start listening. You stop solving everything and start sensing what's needed. You stop grasping for certainty and begin trusting clarity to arise moment by moment. That's the true power of serenity. It doesn't remove life's complexity. It simply reminds you that you don't need to be tangled in it to understand it. So if your mind feels cloudy, if you can't think straight, can't decide, can't rest, don't demand clarity. Invite serenity. Turn down the volume. Step back from the urgency. Let your thoughts settle like snow in a globe. Because serenity isn't passive, it's the most active form of wisdom. The choice to stay rooted, to remain spacious, so that what is true can find you without force. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Marcus Aurelius. The Stoic path teaches that serenity is the foundation for wisdom. Without inner calm, reason cannot operate. Thoughts race, fear distorts, and truth becomes blurred. But when we quiet the mind through reflection, breath, and discipline, we make space for reason to re-enter. The Stoic doesn't chase clarity. They create the conditions for it. And those conditions are born in silence, simplicity, and detachment from the noise of judgment. There is a kind of power that doesn't need an audience. It doesn't seek approval, attention, or applause. It doesn't rise with a roar or demand to be recognized. It is steady, silent, centered. This is the power of calmness, an inner force that doesn't need to prove itself, yet shapes everything it touches. in a world addicted to noise, calmness is often misunderstood. It can be mistaken for weakness, passivity, or lack of urgency. But that misunderstanding says more about the world than it does about calmness itself. Because true calm is not the absence of power. It is its most refined form. It is the clearest expression of strength, not because it overpowers others, but because it refuses to be overpowered. You've likely felt this difference before. Think about the person in the room who doesn't interrupt, but when they speak, everyone listens. The one who doesn't react to provocation, but instead responds with poise. The one who doesn't compete for attention, yet naturally commands it. Their calm presence speaks louder than the volume of those around them. This is not an act. It is not a strategy. It is who they are. Someone who has chosen stability over drama, clarity over confusion, and depth over display. So why does calmness carry such strength? First, because calmness is a form of self-possession. It tells the world, I am not at the mercy of this moment. It reflects a person who has trained themselves not to be led by every emotion or external pressure. Calm people don't ignore stress, they transmute it. They feel fear, irritation, or uncertainty, just like anyone else. But they do not allow these states to dictate their choices. Instead, they turn inward. They ground themselves. Then they act, not with force, but with focus. This level of inner control is not natural for most. It must be practiced, cultivated, built like a muscle. But once established, it becomes a quiet shield, something others can sense, even if they can't explain it. Second, calmness creates psychological safety. People are drawn to those who remain composed under pressure. They trust calm individuals with sensitive tasks, difficult conversations, and high-stakes decisions, not because they always have the answers, but because they can hold space without collapsing. That stability is contagious. It allows others to breathe easier, to think more clearly, to feel seen rather than judged. In this way, calmness becomes not only a personal strength, but a social anchor. Third, calmness preserves energy. The reactive mind burns through resources quickly, emotionally, mentally, and physically. It leaps to conclusions. It battles imagined threats. It drowns in overthinking. But a calm mind is efficient. It moves with precision. It does not waste itself on things beyond control. And that restraint, that discernment, it's not hesitation. It's wisdom. There's a metaphor in martial arts. The best fighters use the least amount of effort to achieve the maximum effect. They don't flail. They don't rage. They wait. They conserve. They strike only when necessary, and when they do, it's impactful. Calmness works the same way. It is composed power held in reserve, ready to act with clarity when the moment calls. But calmness also requires courage. It's easier to shout than to listen, easier to react than to reflect, easier to mimic the chaos around you than to remain grounded in yourself. To be calm in a chaotic world is to risk being misunderstood. People may mistake your quiet for disinterest, your restraint for passivity, your poise for detachment. But you must remember your calmness is not for them. It's for you. It's the soil from which your true strength grows. And strength that is rooted in calm does not fluctuate with mood or circumstance. It does not rely on dominance or fear. It does not rise and fall with public opinion. It is self-sourced, and because of that, it is sustainable. This kind of strength shows itself not in grand gestures, but in subtle, consistent actions, in the choice to pause before replying to provocation, in the ability to stay present during someone else's pain, in the discipline to sit with discomfort without numbing it, in the decision to walk away from conflict that leads nowhere. These are not passive responses. They are active forms of self-respect. They say, I know who I am. I know how I want to show up. I choose to remain aligned even if the world around me is losing itself. There's another beauty to calmness. It's restorative. You don't need to stay calm all the time. You're human. There will be frustration, sadness, excitement, confusion. But the more you value calmness, the more quickly you return to it. You begin to build a kind of emotional home, a baseline that holds you steady through emotional tides. This return is what matters. You fall out of alignment and you return. You lose your temper and you return. You forget your center and you return. Over time, the act of returning becomes instinctual. You trust it. You don't panic when chaos arises because you've practiced coming back to stillness. That too is strength. In calmness, you begin to see more, hear more, understand more. It becomes easier to read the room, to feel nuance, to act from insight rather than impulse. And perhaps most importantly, calmness allows you to remain connected to your values. When you're calm, you don't betray your principles just to win an argument. You don't compromise your dignity for the sake of control. You don't lose yourself trying to match someone else's chaos. This is the strength of calm. You stay grounded in your own truth, even when everything else pulls you to abandon it. So yes, the world may tell you to be loud, to act fast, to fight hard, but there's another way. Be calm, be composed, be rooted, not because it looks impressive, but because it feels true. Because when your calmness is intact, your strength speaks for itself. You won't need to prove your power. You'll simply live it with quiet certainty and unwavering grace. Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water. Marcus Aurelius, calmness to the Stoic is resistance without aggression. It is strength without spectacle. In times of chaos, the Stoic stands firm, not because they are cold or indifferent, but because they are anchored in principle. Their calmness does not deny emotion, it transcends it. Like the cliff, they remain, and by doing so, invite others to rise to stillness rather than sink into noise. Such presence, though quiet, becomes a fortress. Moments of tension reveal things that ordinary moments cannot. Under stress, masks slip, habits surface, patterns emerge, and perhaps most importantly, a person's inner foundation is put on display. You can tell a great deal about someone not by how they speak when things are calm, but by how they carry themselves when things begin to fracture. In those moments where words escalate, faces tighten, and emotions run high, something extraordinary happens when one person remains still, not frozen, not withdrawn, but anchored. This stillness is not silence born of fear. It is not the avoidance of confrontation. It is a quiet presence, deeply alive, intensely aware, and completely unshaken. This kind of inner stillness is one of the rarest and most powerful forms of strength. You see it in the nurse who holds steady when a patient's condition turns critical, in the parent who responds with calm when their child lashes out in pain, in the leader who listens deeply during a heated meeting, refusing to mirror panic or pride, in the friend who doesn't rush to solve your pain, but sits with you in it gently. This strength cannot be faked. You can rehearse confident words, you can memorize strategy, but stillness must be earned. It's forged in quiet hours, built through small choices, and revealed only when life applies pressure. In tense situations, people often default to three things: fight, flight, or freeze. These are ancient survival instincts embedded in the nervous system. But inner stillness is the fourth way, and it doesn't come from instinct. It comes from intention. It says, I recognize the heat of this moment, and I choose not to be consumed by it. This is not detachment. It is full engagement without reactivity. It's not that the calm person feels less. On the contrary, They feel deeply, but they are not ruled by those feelings. They allow space between emotion and expression, between trigger and reaction. This space is sacred. It's what separates maturity from impulse strength, from instability. Stillness in tension doesn't mean suppressing how you feel. It means making room for the entire experience to unfold without becoming entangled in it. It means saying to yourself, yes, this is hard. Yes, this is painful. And still I remain here. I remain whole. This ability changes everything. It changes how conflicts resolve, how relationships evolve, how reputations are remembered. Because when someone stays grounded under pressure, they become a mirror for everyone else. They don't just de-escalate the moment they redefine it. People begin to match their tone. The energy shifts, not because of force, but because of example. Think of a conductor in an orchestra. When the tempo starts to spiral, it's not the volume of their voice that restores order. It's their presence, the stillness of their gesture, the calm certainty of their baton. In a similar way, you can become that presence not by controlling others, but by controlling yourself. There is a difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is immediate, emotional, unfiltered. It often leaves regret in its wake. Responding is measured, aware. It carries weight not because it's loud, but because it's considered. When you respond from stillness, your words are fewer, but they land more deeply. You listen not just to reply, but to understand. You hold space for nuance. You don't rush to defend yourself because your identity is not under threat. You've already done the work of knowing who you are. And that's the secret. Stillness in tension is only possible when you no longer depend on external validation for your internal stability. When your sense of self is not fragile, you don't need to overcorrect every perceived slight. You don't need to retaliate to feel safe. You are rooted in something far deeper than ego. You are rooted in self-respect. And from that root, patience grows. Imagine someone insults you in public. Your instinct may be to snap back to win the moment. But true power lies in choosing not to fight battles that don't serve your peace. Stillness says, I don't need to prove myself here. I know who I am. This doesn't mean you let yourself be walked over. On the contrary, calm people set the firmest boundaries not because they are angry, but because they are clear. Their boundaries are not explosions. They are calm, consistent lines drawn from self-awareness. And when upheld from stillness, boundaries gain incredible strength. In tense moments, the world expects escalation. It expects drama. It expects noise. So when you respond with composure, you interrupt the pattern. You become unpredictable in the best way. You remove oxygen from the fire without avoiding the flames. And in doing so, you often disarm those who came to battle. This isn't about being passive. It's about being precise. Stillness allows you to speak exactly what needs to be said, no more, no less. To move only when necessary, and always with intention. To maintain grace without sacrificing truth. To embody dignity without withdrawing from difficulty. It also protects your energy. Because tension is draining when met with resistance. But when met with calm presence, even the hardest moment becomes more bearable. You stop leaking energy through reactivity. You keep your attention intact. You move through conflict without being consumed by it. And later, when you reflect, you'll notice that your calmness preserved not just your reputation, but your integrity. Because the real question in every tense moment is not, did I win? It's, did I act in alignment with who I want to be? So when tension rises, when voices sharpen, when pressure mounts, when the air becomes thick with urgency, pause. Don't rush to prove. Don't shrink to please. Don't explode to release. Instead, drop in. Feel your breath. Stand tall in your body. Let the storm swirl, but let it swirl around your stillness, not through it. Because in that quiet stance, you're not avoiding the moment. You're mastering it. You're showing strength without raising your voice. And that's a presence people remember not for what you said, but for how you made the moment safer, wiser, and more human. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Epictetus. Tension is the Stoics' training ground. It is where philosophy is no longer theory, but action. The true test of wisdom is how we carry ourselves when provoked. Stillness in such moments isn't avoidance, it is command. The Stoic uses tension to practice virtue, patience, courage, moderation. Every moment of pressure is a chance to stay in control, not of others, but of oneself. That's the highest strength, and it needs no explanation. True authority is not measured by volume, status, or dominance. It is measured by how deeply a person governs themselves. Among all forms of personal power, emotional discipline is one of the most commanding. Not because it controls others, but because it demonstrates command over the self. And nothing earns deeper respect than that. In a culture that rewards immediate expression, where venting is often confused with vulnerability, an unfiltered reaction is mistaken for authenticity. Choosing emotional restraint may seem countercultural, but make no mistake, this kind of restraint isn't repression. It's refinement. It's the intentional practice of honoring your emotions without letting them hijack your behavior. Emotional discipline does not mean becoming emotionless. It means recognizing what you feel and deciding with clarity how to act in response. It is the refusal to let anger speak on your behalf, or fear decide your future, or insecurity shape your tone. It's not about being robotic. It's about being responsible. And that responsibility, when practiced over time, builds a kind of quiet authority that no title or role can fake. You've seen this before. The person who doesn't take the bait in an argument. The leader who stays composed while the room spirals. The partner who remains soft even when hurt, refusing to weaponize their pain. These people exude a kind of gravity. You trust them, not because they're always right, but because they are internally aligned. They don't outsource their behavior to emotion. They pause, they choose, and in that choosing, they reveal their strength. So why is emotional discipline so powerful? First, because it creates trust. People feel safe around those who are emotionally regulated. There's no walking on eggshells, no guessing which version of them will show up. Their responses are stable, their energy is grounded, and this predictability is not boring, it's calming. It creates psychological safety, the foundation for any healthy connection. Second, emotional discipline allows for clarity in chaos. When your inner world isn't spinning every time something difficult arises, you gain access to higher reasoning. You can step back, assess the situation, and respond from principle rather than panic. You hold perspective, and in doing so, you become the person others instinctively look to when things go wrong. Third, it fosters dignity in communication. Emotional chaos often leads to messy, regrettable words. But when you've trained yourself to pause, to breathe, to feel before reacting, your communication becomes cleaner. Your words carry more weight because they're not laced with volatility. They're not trying to dominate. They're trying to connect. And that kind of speech earns attention, not demands it. But let's be clear, emotional discipline is not easy. It's not glamorous. It requires an ongoing commitment to self-awareness. You must be willing to examine your reactions, to question your assumptions, to delay gratification, to recognize when your ego wants control more than connection. And that's hard, especially when emotions feel justified. But here's the paradox. The more deeply you feel something, the more critical it is to meet that feeling with discipline. Because powerful emotions carry the greatest potential for damage when left unchecked. Consider someone who's been deeply wronged. They have every reason to be upset, but instead of lashing out, they pause. They write, reflect, consult, and when they speak, they do so with precision, not poison. Their restraint doesn't dilute the truth, it delivers it with impact. That's the difference between emotional reaction and emotional leadership. The former erupts, the latter builds. The former seeks to release pressure, the latter seeks to express truth without causing unnecessary harm. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. On the contrary, emotional discipline starts with acknowledgement. It says, I feel this. I am allowed to feel this. And I also get to choose how I carry it. That choice is what separates those who are emotionally mature from those who remain reactive. And over time, these choices accumulate. They become character. They become reputation. They become the quiet legacy of someone who didn't just feel deeply, but navigated those feelings with grace. Emotional discipline also protects relationships. In moments of conflict, it allows you to hold your boundary without turning cruel, to express disappointment without degrading the other, to be honest without being harsh. These are not small skills, they are rare. And they change the emotional tone of entire systems, families, teams, partnerships. You begin to lead not just by instruction, but by embodiment. And the more you embody this calm strength, the more your presence becomes a model for others. Not in a performative way, but naturally. People begin to regulate themselves in your presence, not out of fear, but out of resonance. You give them permission to slow down, to listen, to think before they speak. This kind of influence cannot be manufactured. It must be lived, quietly, consistently, day after day. It's built in small moments, choosing not to send that heated message, taking a walk before responding to criticism, admitting you're triggered, but choosing not to act from that place, allowing someone to finish their sentence, even when you disagree. None of these things are dramatic, but together they build a life of discipline, a mind of clarity and a heart that others can trust. And yes, you will mess up. You will lose your cool. You will speak too soon. That's part of being human. But emotional discipline isn't about being flawless. It's about noticing faster, repairing sooner, and choosing better next time. So if you want to be strong, start here. Not with domination, not with display, but with the simple, courageous act of governing yourself. Let your calmness be your authority. Let your restraint be your credibility. Let your discipline be your strength, not the kind that roars, but the kind that holds space, holds dignity, holds truth without needing to shout it. Because in the end, the clearest mark of inner power is not how loud you are. It's how consistently you show up with grace, even when emotion wants to pull you elsewhere. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus. Emotions are not enemies of the Stoic, but neither are they masters. The Stoic acknowledges all feelings, but grants reason the final say. Emotional discipline is not about denial. It is about choosing wisely. It is self-command in action. The person who feels deeply, yet still speaks with care, and acts with intention, holds a power that outlasts force. This authority is internal, earned through daily effort. That effort is the Stoic's way. There is a kind of calm that no one can give you and no one can take away. It's not the result of a perfect morning routine. It doesn't come from controlled environments or cooperative people. It arises from within. It is born not from ease, but from experience, refined in moments of hardship, tested by chaos and strengthened through solitude. It is a stillness that holds steady regardless of what surrounds it. This unshakable calm is not situational. It's not I'm calm because everything is okay. It's I remain calm even when everything is not okay. That's the difference, and that difference changes lives. Most people seek calmness as a temporary relief, a moment of escape from tension. They take a deep breath, listen to music, go for a walk. These things help. But if the calm vanishes the moment someone says the wrong thing or a plan doesn't go your way, then what you had was not calm, it was just distraction. Unshakable calm is something else entirely. It is not conditional, it is not performative. It is a state of being rooted in the decision, I will not allow my peace to depend on what I cannot control. This kind of peace becomes a form of power, not loud or aggressive, but quietly immovable, like a mountain that remains while storms pass through. It may be hit by wind, rain, and thunder, but it does not collapse. It simply remains. That is what unshakable calm feels like inside a person. It is the refusal to be dictated by external noise. But this strength does not appear overnight. It is cultivated not in moments of perfection, but in moments of disruption, when things don't go as planned and you choose not to panic. When someone speaks to you with disrespect and you don't let it define you. When life delays detours or disappoints and you respond not with despair, but with deep breath and quiet focus. These are the practices. These are the moments that build what no storm can undo. The truth is, we live in a volatile world. There will always be another crisis, another change, another wave of unpredictability. If your inner state is tethered to external conditions, you will always be emotionally hostage. But when you build calmness from the inside out, you are free, not because life is easy, but because you are no longer waiting for life to cooperate with your peace. This inner steadiness allows you to carry calmness into places that need it most, into high-stress rooms where decisions are rushed and nerves are frayed, into relationships where wounds run deep and words can sting, into parenting where chaos is often the norm, into leadership where uncertainty tests character. You don't bring calm to impress others. You bring it because you've learned that being a source of stillness is more powerful than being a source of control. And this calm isn't passive. It's not the absence of care. It's not indifference. It's anchored awareness being fully present without being pulled out of alignment. You still feel, you still care, you still act. But you are no longer acting from the frantic energy of fear or the desperate grip of control. You act from depth, from center, from a place that cannot be shaken because you no longer live on the surface of your life. To reach this place takes discipline, not just in the way you act, but in the way you think. It means training your mind to pause when things go wrong, not to suppress emotion, but to stay rooted in reality. It means refusing to argue with what is, and instead asking, given this, how can I move with peace? It means letting go of narratives that say, I can only feel okay if others behave the way I want. Because true calm is not about bending the world to fit your preferences. It's about expanding your capacity to remain whole, even when the world refuses to cooperate. Over time, this becomes your new default, not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger through stillness. You stop getting swept away by every wave. You stop reacting to every provocation. You stop defending your worth to those who cannot see it. You no longer carry your identity in the opinions of others or the outcome of events. You carry it in your breath, in your patience, in the quiet moments where you choose grace over drama, in the silence between reactions where peace is planted and power is grown. This doesn't make you invincible, but it makes you free. Free from the tyranny of overreaction, free from the cycle of emotional exhaustion, free from the illusion that chaos must be matched with chaos. And as this calmness deepens, it starts to ripple. You begin to calm others without speaking. You de-escalate situations by simply holding presence. You lead not with demands, but with energy that invites others to soften. Your calm becomes a kind of emotional leadership, one that doesn't dominate but dignifies, not by silencing others, but by showing what it looks like to stay grounded, not by being untouched, but by being unchanged by the touch of chaos. So as you walk forward from here, ask yourself, who do I become when everything falls apart? What part of me remains untouched by circumstance? Where does my calm come from? And how do I protect it? Because the world will keep spinning. People will keep disappointing. Plans will keep shifting. But you can remain. You can build an inner place so rooted that nothing on the outside can uproot it. And that is strength. Not just any strength, but the kind that whispers when the world screams, that stays when others scatter, that listens when it hurts, that holds peace like a torch in the storm. To live a good life, we have the potential for it, if we learn to be indifferent to what makes no difference. Marcus Aurelius, the unshakable calm the Stoics speak of, isn't circumstantial, it's cultivated. It is the product of knowing what is within your power and letting go of what isn't. When calm no longer depends on people, outcomes, or appearances, it becomes invincible. No insult, no delay, no loss can steal it. This is Stoic freedom, not freedom from life, but freedom in it. The calmest soul is not numb, but sovereign. And that is the truest strength. By now you've seen it for yourself. Calmness isn't passive. It isn't weakness. It isn't avoidance. It is strength cultivated quietly, lived deliberately, and expressed without noise. Across these 12 parts, we've explored calmness as presence, as clarity, as restraint, and as authority. We've looked at how it shows up in moments of tension, how it reshapes relationships, how it transforms the way we lead and the way we respond to life's chaos. But more than anything, we've come to one truth. The calm you build becomes the ground you stand on. When the world moves fast, you won't. When others push, you'll pause. When things fall apart, you'll remain not frozen, but focused. Not numb, but clear. Because true calm isn't about being untouched. It's about being unchanged. It doesn't mean you won't feel anger, heartbreak, confusion, or fear. It means you won't let those feelings drive the car. You'll hold them, honor them, and still move with grace. And that kind of person, that kind of presence, it's rare, it's magnetic, it's unforgettable. We need more of it in this world. Not louder voices, not faster reactions, not more performance. We need people who breathe before they speak, who listen with their whole being, who create space instead of drama, who remind others without even trying that peace is possible. Maybe that person is you, not because you've mastered it, but because you're willing to keep returning to it, because you're choosing over and over again to live from the inside out, not the outside in. So wherever you are in your journey, whether you're learning to pause, or learning to return, or simply learning to believe that calmness is power, know this: every breath you take from stillness reshapes your life. Every moment you choose calm over chaos changes the people around you. And every time you stay grounded, especially when no one else does, you embody a strength that can't be faked, shaken, or taken. Let that be your legacy. If this journey moved something in you, subscribe to stay grounded with us and leave a comment. Which part of this 12-part series will stay with you the longest? We'd love to hear what you're carrying forward. The world is noisy, but you can be the calm in it.